I'm really delighted to welcome Belgian pianist Aaron Wainberg. And today we have an episode at the candlelight. We are so late on the different reasons that we have a candlelight here. And it's quite late. It's already after 10 p.m. Aaron, are you very tired? Or it's going to be fine?
I'm a bit tired, but it's fine. I'm much looking forward to talk to you and yeah, happy to contribute to such a beautiful purpose. Huh?
We are, the life of the musician is that way that you are quite often up in the night and playing concerts. And how much of the bohemian life do you really have? How much of the cliche is it? And, you know,
I'm afraid I have it all. It's after concerts, very often after the concerts, you go out, you talk to fellow musicians, to people in the audience. There's a lot going on in the night, and it's of course also I'm also somebody who likes the night. The night is the moment where I can reflect. The night is the moment where I can work at ease, where I'm alone. Um, I have so much work to do that very often I use the night also as the time for me to work. My teacher used to say, whenever a student said to him that he or she did not have enough time to practice, he would say, sleep less, practice more. And yeah, I have two kids. And yeah, very often the night is the moment where I can really take the time for myself.
yeah, of course.
Besides the practical aspect, I like the atmosphere of the night. I am somebody who loves to live during the night, and I'm less active here in the mornings.
All right, so you're a night owl.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it fits very good to the portrait of the musician and the artist, especially, something about the beginning of the 20th century. So if you might be able to just stand up and let's feel the cliche picture for our audience of a pianist who stands up or is not even going to bed in the night, approach the piano and starts to play, which piece would that be? What would you play then?
Oh, interesting. Um, you mean solo repertoire?
Of
Like,
course, I guess you are alone in the night with the piano, but
oh
maybe
yeah,
you have
I'm
got
of course
company. So,
I'm alone. I'm very often alone during the night, but as you know, a lot of my time I devote to the work with singers.
mm,
So I might practice pieces like Winterreise or Schwanengesang in the
mhm.
night. And it would be very inspiring, I think, to practice, for example, Der Doppelgänger or the Leiermann in the night. That being said, if you are referring to solo pieces, I am very fascinated by the late works of Alexander Scriabin.
Of course.
And, pieces like, and not very often played, Vers la Flamme or the seventh or the eighth or
Yeah.
the 10th sonata are a bit mystical. And I think it's music almost, you're almost obliged to play those pieces at night. I think.
Really? Could you imagine giving a concert at night with Scriabin, like now we are having our conversation with this light.
Yeah.
Imagine give a concert playing Scriabin with candlelights
Yeah. Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
alone.
I think that's how Scriabin thought his music should be performed. I mean, he was very, very much aware of atmosphere, and even going very far in his perception of how a piece should be. I mean, he would even suggest sometimes even perfume or acoustical effects. So actually I did it once. I played 8th, 9th, and 10th Scriabin sonata in one recital, and it was part of an integral Scriabin sonatas, on all the sonatas on one evening. So they started, of course, with number one, but by
Yeah.
the time that I had to play, it was already after midnight. So I played those last three sonatas during midnight, and I think it suited the time of the day particularly well.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? So, which sort of hall would you take then, and how would you direct? How would you really stage this sort of recital in the night? Which repertoire would you take? How would you,
You know,
if you could, and where would it be?
the more I work with singers and the more that I also think about Liederabend, the more awkward. Of course, I'm very happy whenever I play on the very big stages, and I was lucky that I was invited already quite often to very important stages such as Concertgebouw Amsterdam or Carnegie Hall New York, and obviously it's a big honor to perform there. But that being said, it is awkward when you think about this, that most of the music by Schubert, for example, was actually premiered, if you want, in very intimate setting, maybe sometimes during a Schubertiad or sometimes even at a cafe or something. And it was performed for friends, maybe 10, 20 friends. And in many aspects, I consider this kind of setting just a salon house where you are just surrounded by maybe 10 friends and you share the intimacy of that moment. And you can also feel the presence of those 10 people very closely. You're almost breathing this music together. It touches an essence of art making that is very true to me, and something that is much more difficult to obtain in the very big concert hall.
Yeah, and here we go. Here we approach the main theme of the issue of the Watchman, um, the issue where our candlelight episode is going to be released. And our theme is the elitism, and how does this affect classical music, and which effect does it has. So if we say, or if we say that classical music is something elitist or for an elite, and has to be played in a big hall, in the Carnegie Hall or Wigmar Hall or wherever, and it's something very for a certain circle of people. But on the other hand, just you have just said that the music has been composed not for the elite, but for everybody who loves to hear that. So from where is the source of belief that the classical music is something for a big hall, for the elite, and not for everybody who wants to hear that and enjoy that, and for friends or for lovers, or just as any other source of nature available here?
Mm. But I honestly I don't know who would say such things. Um, I mean, why? Because the ticket prices are much higher than
No, in
to
fact,
go to the
no,
cinema or something.
no, the ticket prices for classical concerts are much less expensive than ticket prices for any pop music concert.
So where's the elitism?
Exactly. But there is a belief in the society that the classical music is an elitist good. And I want to know
It's
why,
it's
where
I
is
know I know that this is an opinion, but quite ignorant because if you look at the the composers that we admire, that we adore, that we take in our hearts, and that we devote our lives to. We were just talking about Schubert, but we were talking about Scriabin. We can talk about Mozart. We can talk about Beethoven. We can talk about Schumann. All those composers, from a economical perspective, lived an extremely modest life. I mean, very often died in absolute poverty. So there's no elitism in that sense. Those were not the economical superstars of their time. There were other composers maybe um, more successful on that economical level, but certainly not the great composers of our of the history of music. Now, that being said, what I think is important is that we understand what this elitism that people ignorantly refer to actually means. If you say elitism as something that is above everybody else, in a sense that uh, uh, we make a distinction between people, and some people are more than others, I think it's completely wrong. This has nothing to do. On the contrary, this has nothing to do with the great music, because on the contrary, the great music is such of such philosophical power that it 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 resembles people. Huh?
Exactly, because the
First of
music
all,
language
yeah.
is available for everybody equally.
The second thing is we can also look at elitism from a perspective of taking responsibility. You are part of an elite because your state of mind pushes you to take a certain responsibility. In that sense, I can maybe agree, yes, that the music of Bach, Beethoven, and others demand a certain elitism. If
Right,
we look at it from that perspective, if we look at it from a perspective that each individual in society needs to take the responsibility to take and to wanting to invest the effort of studying great music, then I agree. That's the sort of elitism I can rely to, because
right.
it's true that the great music demands also some effort.
Yeah, but to bring an effort is basically, it is a thing of will. And everybody, despite the cultural or economical background, is in state to make that effort. Am I right or wrong from your point of view? So you don't need to belong to a certain group of people. You don't need to be rich. You don't need to be famous or coming from some, famous family to be able to do this effort in fast.
Absolutely. I agree. I completely agree. And so if you are willing to do that, if you are willing to put the effort that the great music demands, of course, first of all, you will you will be very lucky in life. I think what you will get in return is something priceless, is something of such a value. You will cherish that for all your life. But in that sense, the nobility of the gesture of wanting to take this responsibility, for me, that's a certain elitism that I think is beautiful.
All right. So from the standpoint as a teacher, you are teaching in several conservatories
Mhm.
in Belgium. Which sort of students do you teach? Are they destined to become uh, to become professional musicians, or it's for everybody who just wants to get a clue of classical music?
I do teach most of my time. I teach students who are actually professional,
Mm-hmm.
so who are studying at the Royal Conservatory in Antwerp and aiming for a professional degree in music, or maybe even a career on the podium, on the concert stage.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, I'm always very intrigued also by very, very young students, because the younger you can get them, the younger you can start teaching them, the more impact you can have. So I do have also students, let's say, from a very early age that I follow and that I accompany during their development. And some of them I'm already teaching now since I have one student, no, or two students that I'm teaching since 12 years, and now they're 18 years. So started off when they were 6 years old. And it's yeah, of course, I was also taught by uh, Ukrainian and Russian teachers. This was very normal for them. You follow those students from a very early age until maturity, and you get a very, very strong, um, very strong education on all the aspects of music making. This is something I sometimes miss whenever I start teaching a student at the age of 18, because somehow they did not really get the basic level of pianism as I wanted. So it makes it difficult sometimes to go to the highest level, because there is this barrier of technical problems, which I don't have with the students that I taught from the very early age.
Yeah, certainly. But now we're speaking again about something, about teaching a group of students which are going to do something what might be called as elitist from a standpoint of, of wider audience. But if we see how can we possibly improve the level of musical and cultural education among children and young people, which are not going to become any sort of musician or any sort of classical artist, but how can we possibly educate and prepare the audience among younger generation? Because the problem is that the people who are attending classical concerts are usually far over 60, aren't they? So what can we possibly do
Well,
to...
for me, that's very clear. I mean, the music is as fundamental in the education as anything else. I mean, as mathematics, as biology, as general history. Music is fundamental. Unfortunately, nowadays in most countries, music doesn't is not part of the general education anymore. This is the problem. Music, classical music, should be educated from a very early age and should be obliged. It should be fundamental in the full educational package. Once this will be integrated again, it will resolve many problems.
But how do you see now, concretely in in the field of the education, we are facing the digitalization. The AI is is day by day more and more established. And how can we possibly combine the digitalization with the classical music? So how can we digitalize classical music education? How can we make it accessible for the generation which is grown up with an iPad and an iPhone and has really nothing to do anymore with the world where anybody of our generation has been growing up?
Mm. I don't have a clear answer on that. Honestly, with my own children, I try to minimize the level of of iPad and digitalization in their lives. I mean, there's enough of this. What, as far as I'm concerned, music education is something that needs to be done uh, in person, and from the teacher to a student, and not through digitalization. And I think, yeah, in general, I think we are at the turning point in civilization, and we need to be very careful. And I think there are a lot of many good things that we can have from this digitalization, from AI and so on, but we need to be very careful that the most important aspects of being human are not reduced to digitalization, because there are things we cannot replace. And one of the things one should never try to replace is the nobility of the contact between one human being and another. And you see it with many things, pornography and so. You see people try to reduce their emotional world into a screen.
Yeah.
It's very, very dangerous. One needs to know there is nothing we can do to substitute human contact. And after all, music making is human, it's humanity, it's human contact.
Okay. Coming back to you, one can read on your website just as healing. The pianist Aaron Wainberg assists singing sensitively, and yet often enough finds the courage to set his own point. So, please, could you tell me how would you define this particular own point? How do you? What is it? Could you
Excuse me, what especially you want me to define?
to define the point? So, How are you doing that? How are you setting your own point?
Well, this quote is a quote by a concert critic, I guess, huh? And so I did not write this, huh?
If I asked you, could you
Yeah,
define your artistic pianistic point in a couple of words?
as an accompanist for singers, or
Both. I'm interested to know both. And what is the difference, What is the difference in a point as the accompanist?
mm,
And are you another artist? Are you another personality when you go and enter the stage as a soloist then? Or you're the same one, but just in a different genre?
um, well, my career as an accompanist was actually launched by on the basis of luck, basically. I mean, I was lucky enough that my wife was successful in Queen Elizabeth competition, and I was her accompanist. And suddenly, after this competition, I got the possibility to accompany other laureates, and I suddenly had a career as an accompanist. Now, um, I also discovered myself in this process. I discovered actually that I am an accompanist. I was never completely in harmony and balance with myself when I was alone on stage. I do play solo because it's important. It's important, and I love the repertoire so much. So I do study, and I do. By the way, during many recitals I give with singers, I play very often a small solo intermezzo. So I continue to be a pianist. The point is that to be a soloist in a sense, to play 40, 50 solo concerts a year, to be alone on stage, to practice alone, is not who I am.
Mhm.
Now, as a accompanist, I am constantly, really, 90% of my concentration, of my focus is with the singer. So it's a very different attitude. I mean, I'm playing the piano, but with my full mind and heart and breathing, I am actually with another person. So yeah, it's very without ego. I mean, if and I think that's the most beautiful thing that one can achieve, is that during a concert one completely forget about ego.
Yeah, yourself. And so you combine different positions. On one hand, you have this career as accompanist, and on the other hand, you have leading positions. You're leading that and other projects. So how would you describe this difference in these roles between the position of work where you completely give up yourself while accompanying and playing with a singer, and then in the other role, in the other place, you are the leader, you are leading the team, and you're
Yeah,
something where you have the responsibility and you are in a completely different mode. So how do you deal with this
yeah. I
double?
don't. I honestly I don't deal with that, because the main focus is always the same. How can we serve music? And so I'm a artistic director in the Conservatory of Mechelen, and my main focus, while even talking about budgets and talking about maybe buying a new piano or talking about which method will we use for the solfeggio lessons and so on. But the main question is always the same: how can we serve music in the best possible way? I do that as a teacher, I do that as a performer, and I do that as a manager. But always, the motivation is always, how can we serve music?
Right. Yeah, I see the point. You know, the situation with the particularly classical music is not the easiest one nowadays. And we, you know, if we like it or not, but we can't deny the fact that the interest and desire by a wide range of audience to listen to some classical pieces is not on the top level at the moment. So what could be possibly done to regain the relevance of classical music in a wider range of audience? Which method is the proper one to get it done?
Education, as we discussed before, it all comes back to education. Without education, it's just not possible to appreciate great music. You need to be educated, and you know, basically everything in life is a matter of willingness to educate others, and to educate yourself. It's the openness and the desire and the modesty to always try to look beyond walls. So we need to be careful, and we need to understand that education is key in everything. So whenever young children are exposed to classical music, whenever young children are learning music, I think this is the absolute greatest gift we can give society. And so the more they will appreciate, the more they will understand. The more they will understand, the more they will feel the desire and the motivation to go to concerts. The more they will understand themselves, the necessity to transmit this to the next generation as well.
So for that reason, possibly the price, you know, reduction for example, opera houses might be of help to allow people and families to attend the
Yeah,
concerts
yeah.
shows.
This is true, but I think many opera houses, they already do that kind of efforts. Of course, the business model, if we just look from a business perspective, the business model is not economically very interesting. Uh, you understand what I'm saying? I mean, an opera production, like average production, costs at least $1 million to just put it on the stage. And there are so many people working on it. And if you, an average opera concert hall has maybe 1,000 seats. If you sell those 1,000 seats at 50 euros, then you have 50,000 euros ticketing. So, and the average opera production goes maybe 10 times. So you're always basically losing money. So that's why the politicians need to understand that one should not look at it from a strictly economical perspective, because obviously if you do that, we are lost. Then you need to go to football games or to big pop concerts, then you can make it economically more interesting. But if you understand the educational value of this kind of investment, that they will understand that it's worth it. So, and that gives the opera houses or other important concert stages the possibility to reduce their ticketing prices,
In
so
that
that
case,
it's more democratic.
in that case, it is needed a political will to give a certain amount of money for the opera house and for the concert hall, a contribution yearly, let's say, that the opera house and the concert hall is then
Yeah.
able to reduce their tickets.
Yeah.
And that's actually not that difficult, because for football or for Eurovision or whatever else, it's quite often there is no luck in funds, but for classical or theater or literature productions, there's always lack of funds. And the question is why? Why is one or another sport event usually covered, and opera is expensive, and that's why, or a concert, and that's why it gets this title of elitist thing, because nobody can afford, or not that many people can afford the nice tickets to, and they can see and show their children what is going on stage.
Yeah.
So that is a circle of it's a doomed or cursed circle of unfulfilled expectations, and everybody's unhappy. At the end of the day, the musicians can't earn enough, and people can't get a show.
But there's a great deal of responsibility also with us. I mean, now I think the last, let's say, 10 years, we learned our lesson, and the classical musicians and the concert promoters and the managers in the classical music world, they really did their best to really go and try to reach a younger audience. Now, but we need to also again, when you're talking about elitism, I think it's important that we are not putting those two things, let's say a big sports event, against an opera. Both are important in life. There's nothing wrong with the big sports event. It has its place in society and it's important. I enjoy a football game. I love
Me
to
too.
go.
I love
I love it. So it's not that it's one or another. It has the place in society it needs to have, but music as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So just, I would like to get a little bit distracted from that. I saw you played in Rio de Janeiro. So how was it? Did you enjoy the place?
Oh, this is very emotional to me because I don't know why life is sometimes a mystery. I was fascinated by Rio de Janeiro from very, very, very early age. I don't even remember, but somehow I must have seen something on television when I was maybe 7 years old, and I was fascinated, maybe even obsessed by Rio de Janeiro. By the way, a lot of great football players they come from Rio de Janeiro, so that must always that probably also triggered my interest. But I was fascinated by Rio de Janeiro, and then also, of course, when I started reading, yeah, I was as a child also moved and yeah, touched by the fact that so many poor children on the streets of Rio de Janeiro. So when I was maybe 12 years old, I started to do concerts, and I was sending money to Rio de Janeiro. Yes.
Oh, amazing, yeah.
Yeah, and I was organizing in my school some activities so that we could send this to Rio de Janeiro. So for many, many years I did that. And then a certain point, I had a concert. I don't remember exactly it. I must have been like 17 or 18 years old. And the people that I gave money from Rio de Janeiro, they were at this concert in Belgium.
And
Yeah, and I told them, yeah, I'm so happy and that I could contribute a little bit. And then they said to me, listen, it's such an unbelievable story. This little boy from 12, 13, 14, 15 years old each year was sending thousands and thousands of euros to Rio de Janeiro. And why? And I said, yeah, it was just my fascination and I wanted to help. And then said, but you should come. I said, I would love to come. And then, but I was young. I did not have really money to go there. And then uh, somehow they said, you know what? Why don't you come next month? And I could find very cheap tickets, and I left to Rio de Janeiro the month after, and I played again a concert for this Sao Martinho group, and this time at the Teatro Municipal. It was part of a larger event, and I played third Brahms nota. But you know what the fascinating thing was? And it happened two times in my life. When I arrived in Rio de Janeiro, I knew every street. I did not need a map. It was way before GPS.
unbelievable,
I
yeah.
knew exactly my way, and I can tell you, Rio is a metropolitan.
Yeah.
It's But I was reading about Rio for years, every book. So I could easily walk in the city. I knew everything. Like, oh, this is Teatro Municipal, this is Copacabana, we can go to Botafogo, this is Grajaú in the north. I knew the whole city. And I had the same when I, many years later, went to Kiev.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there you have your, you know, your
This is my roots, and I felt extremely at home, even that for me as a Belgian guy, going to Kiev in the winter time,
yeah,
you have these very Soviet kind of buildings.
yeah.
Many people would be maybe a bit scared, but for me it felt very natural. Kiev for me is like, oh, I arrived home finally. It's a bit romanticized maybe the story, but somehow those two experiences in my life were very important, and I never went back afterwards to Rio de Janeiro, but I would love to go there once. And yes, I would
Yeah,
love to go back.
Copacabana.
I
Give a
would,
concert in the Copacabana.
actually, Teatro Municipal is very close to Copacabana.
So nice. Yeah, I would love to go to Rio de Janeiro too. As you, I'm also fascinated, and it's really my dream destination to go there.
And we will go together, huh?
Yes. So, you know, I would like to, you know, to go a little bit closer to the end of this nice conversation, and I would love to ask you to play, but probably another time. Tell me, if you heard that, let's say one day, this is the last day in life, the last day of the world, and after tomorrow is going to be nothing there. Death is coming. What would you do? And would be any place for music there in this day?
Oh, I don't need to think too much. If I have one more day to live, I would be with my children.
It's no music.
My children.
That's understandable.
I
And
mean, this is, yeah, my whole purpose in life is, yeah, is focused now. Of course, I'm making music, but my children are whatever keeps me going.
yeah, I understand this perfectly. And do you hear any music in your private time? And if so, then which one? Which genre, which music do you prefer to listen?
I'm a crazy guy. I am obsessed by music. You know, today I was teaching maybe for 14 hours or something, and I can easily listen to music now again. I mean, it's never too much for me. And
But
this
in
is
your
the
free
problem.
time, you know, when you're done with the work, what sort of music do you hear? Do you listen?
Everything. I can listen to Bach cantatas. I can listen to Beethoven symphonies. I can listen to Brahms quartet, to Fauré. I can listen to Protopopov sonatas. I can to. I mean, I'm fascinated by music.
Jazz, klezmer, chanson?
Yes, klezmer, everything. Yeah. Now, Arthur Rubinstein used to say, you have two kinds of music, good and bad. And I agree. I mean, I don't listen to everything. I mean, I would not listen to hardcore or heavy metal stuff or electronic things. This is not. But the great music, bossa nova, jazz, Chet Baker, Bill Evans, Oscar Peterson, I know this music very well, and I adore it. I absolutely adore it. But also music from South America, which is
Yeah.
very important in my life. I told you, but music from, if you don't know it, please listen. Agustin Barrios Mangore, for me,
Right.
one of the most genius composers of all time. But he was from Paraguay, and nobody knows him. Maybe this is a kind of elitism from the West.
Very interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Keep speaking about
Yeah,
that.
Agustin Barrios Mangore was an Indian,
Right.
and he wrote music for guitar. You know
Right.
that in most conservatories, guitar was only considered as a serious instrument in the last 20 years, maybe.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
ridiculous. And the same goes with composers from South America. They were not seen like very interesting. Of course, if you say next to Beethoven, nobody is interesting, but it's bullshit because music by Astor Piazzolla, music by Heitor Villa-Lobos, music by Agustin Barrios Mangore, Antonio Ruiz Pipo. Those are great, great composers, but composers in the popular style of South America. But great, great music, and especially if you go listen to the harmonizations of Mangore, the counterpoint, it's so unique, this style.
Have you played any piano piece by him?
No, well, Mangore, so Barrios actually, Agustin Barrios Mangore was mainly a guitar composer.
But the
But
transcription is always possible.
yeah, and this music is maybe the music you will be fascinated, but next to the music of Bach, the music by Agustin Barrios is the music that touches me the most. And there is a piece by Agustin Barrios called La Catedral, the cathedral.
Yes,
It consists of three movements.
yes.
And the first movement is a prelude solemne.
Yeah.
And this is something I often play on piano. You can play it on piano. I have the music, so I do play it. But on the guitar, it's more beautiful. And it's very interesting actually. Do you know what Frédéric Chopin used to say?
No.
He say he said there's actually only one thing more beautiful than the piano. He said,
And
this is the guitar.
all right.
And then he said there's actually only one thing more beautiful than a guitar. He said two guitars. And just to tell you, many of the great Paganini, Schubert, they all knew the guitar. The guitar is a much more interesting instrument than maybe people still think of. It comes from the lute. There's a great repertoire, and you can play many. You're a violinist, but if you listen to some of the great guitarists like Segovia or Barueco or Fernando Gonzalez, you can hear they play sonatas and partitas by Bach on a
Yes, yeah.
very high level.
Very beautiful on this guitar. I love the guitar too, of course, as well. So tell me, what's your favorite book and your favorite film?
Oh, you know, my favorite book is always the book that I'm reading, and actually now I'm reading. Yeah, I'm reading many books actually, but I'm reading Alexander Solzhenitsyn, One Day in the Life of Denis Denisov.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
This is what I'm reading now, and also the Master and Margarita from Bulgakov.
Yeah.
This is fascinating. This is what I'm reading right now. About movies, I am a fanatic of Woody Allen.
Mhm.
I love Woody Allen, and I have basically I've seen everything he made. So, but maybe the movie I like most uh, is Annie Hall and
Mm.
Vicky Cristina Barcelona, but and a recent one actually, Andras Schiff also like this movie is Blue Jasmine.
Yeah, it's a nice one. Yeah.
All movies by Woody Allen. I think those are masterpieces, really.
And there is an Amazon Prime, a brilliant series of him. Um, I can't recall at the moment the title, but I will follow up. And in a way, it is far better than any other very famous films you just mentioned. And this is so nice, with brilliant cast, and it's really, really a huge, huge thing to watch on the Amazon Prime. It would be nice. Just check it out, and I will follow up. Then
It,
the last question before we sadly have to finish our conversation. Food and drinks favorite.
food and drinks. Oof. Uh, this is difficult. This is very difficult. I can't pick. Um, but I can tell you my favorite restaurant in Antwerp.
Yes.
And my favorite restaurant in Antwerp is a place called Ristorante Arte. It's in the center of Antwerp. It's an Italian restaurant. And there you can eat a pasta with black truffle.
Amazing.
And this tagliolini, as it's called, Nero, with the truffle, the black truffle. This is something I can highly recommend all the people watching. Go to Antwerp and have this black truffle pasta.
I can't wait to do this.
And this is just unbelievable. And then drink it with a good red wine. It's the best you can have. It's a moment of pure relaxation, feeling good.
I can't wait to do that, to come to Antwerp and to go there. Just to mention the city film I wanted to share with you of Woody Allen is called Crisis in Sixth Sense. So check it out and have a watch. I love this series. I adore Woody Allen as you do, and really you won't regret it. So it's usually I like to close the podcast interview when we change the position, and you are free to ask me any question of your preference in return.
Okay, very good. Give me 10 seconds. "10 years from now, where would you like to be?"
Wherever it is, I would like to be in a place which is nice, and I would like to be sure that my children are all right and everything is fine wherever it is. To be in a nice place. That's it.
Well, I wish you that, Hana.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the conversation. Can't wait for another time. Can't wait to hear you play and to share this with our audience, and hope this is going to happen very soon. So with that, I have to say, I don't say goodbye. I say see you next time. Have a nice time ahead, and thank you so much for having.
Thank you so much.